So at this stage, I would like to invite Tony Pike, who is the Justice, Peace and Ecology representative at the Association of Leaders of Missionaries and Religious in Ireland. And as Sister Mary had explained to us, Tony is going to lead Sister Winifred and Sister Veronica in a conversation. So Tony, you have the floor.
And I'm on mute. Thanks, Brian, and thank you, Sister Mary. That was very comprehensive. And welcome to everybody here tonight to this webinar. As Sister Mary and Brian mentioned, I'm going to have a conversation with Sister Veronica and Sister Winifred, our two guests for the webinar, for this first part of the webinar. Sister Veronica Oyenisi is a representative of the Africa-Europe Faith and Justice Network in Nigeria. She is the coordinator of the antenna in Nigeria. She's a campaigner for Our Land is Our Life campaign and director of the Women's Interfaith Council of Nigeria. She is a member of the Missionary Sisters of Our Lady of the Apostles, and she is zooming in tonight from Nigeria. Sister Veronica, you're very, very welcome. Sister Winifred Doherty, who's sat in New York at the minute, is a Good Shepherd sister from Ireland. She is a social worker by profession and worked in Ethiopia for 16 years, empowering girl children and young women through education and microfinance programs. She is the NGO representative to the United Nations for her congregation and its partner in mission, and has been there since 2008. She collaborates with other NGOs in New York and globally, particularly in the areas of eradication of poverty, prostitution and human trafficking, violence against women and girls, and working for the promotion of the girl child and integral ecology. Sister Winifred, you're also very, very welcome this evening.
Thank you.
Now, you are both very deeply committed to ensuring that the behaviour of transnational corporate operations and those across their value chain, which sometimes can be quite difficult to identify, to ensure and aim to guarantee the human rights of individuals, groups and communities who are directly and indirectly impacted by the operations of these corporations. Can I firstly ask, could you illustrate to us briefly some of the key issues and experiences in the areas of focus and the countries that you know of, and where corporations are denying and abusing human rights? Perhaps if I start with Sister Winifred.
Thank you very much, Tony. And it's a pleasure for me to be here to talk in terms of this hugely important area when we start to look at corporate influence throughout the world, and how indeed it is exploitative. My key issue as I come to this webinar is around human rights abuses, particularly focused in terms of ending child labour with regard to the Democratic Republic of Congo, but also ending all gender-based violence that is perpetrated against women and girls. And that is every country in the world. There is no exception. And so I am a representative here at the United Nations for Good Shepherd Sisters. And I have been a link, if you like, in terms of the work at the cold face, if I can put it that way, of child labour in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And through my work here, I like to think of myself as a link because it's very much a linked journey And all of us, I think, have heard about the links that are necessary, how we join group with group to try and impact this huge giant that is facing us. Indeed, maybe to look at it in the scriptural context, the Pharaoh of today. The Pharaoh of today who is exploiting women and children throughout the world. And so my work has taken me from the DRC right here to the United Nations, but also to the floor of Tesla, which is the electric vehicle manufacturer for electric cars, which of course we want to bring about climate change and lessen our carbon footprint, etc. But are we aware of what's actually happening to people in the supply chain, but particularly as we go right down to the area where cobalt is manufactured and is taken out of the earth and brought forward. So in that, there's huge human rights abuses right throughout the process. And so it doesn't matter whether we're talking about one corporate or just the whole scene of multinational corporations. And of course, not all can be targeted because some are actually trying to be ethical and moral and engage in sustainability. But there are the giants, the pharaohs of trade. So maybe that was my cue to stop.
Thanks, Sister Winifred. Sister Veronica, what might that look like in your work in Nigeria and perhaps even across West Africa?
Thank you very much, Tony, and well done, Winifred, for your great work. In Nigeria, some of these multinational companies, they operate with different names, and most of their operation has a lot of
Oh, have we lost Sister Veronica? Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I think we might have lost Sister Veronica. So you're spotlighted now, Sister Winifred, and hopefully we'll get back Sister Veronica, because she does some amazing work there around land grabbing.
Yes.
Maybe if we I mean the focus of this webinar is, you know, specifically on the ways in which the experiences of corporate irresponsibility disproportionately undermines the human rights of women and girls, in particular in Africa, but across the world as well. In what ways does this look like? You know, how are women and girls directly and indirectly impacted by the operations of corporations and the supply chains and also those kind of hidden links?
Thank you, Tony, and I do hope that Veronica is able to reconnect, because you know, when I met Veronica, she has another whole experience of the corporate sector and what it's doing. And this is where we need multiple voices coming with their multiple perspectives to inform us. So I do hope and pray that she's back soon. What does exploitation look like on the ground? When I know I'm talking about the Democratic Republic of Congo as I present here this evening, and so I went back and I looked at a documentary that we made some years after we begun our mission, and it was called Maisha. And later I'll put the link in the in the chat for you. But I think what that film was showing, and what I want to kind of paraphrase for you this evening, is what it is like to be at the bottom end, groveling in the dirt. As I already said, the race for cobalt to address the climate issue is certainly laudable, but it's also, according to our experience in the DRC, it's opportunistic. And so where there's a profit to be gleaned, multinational corporations are in the lead. And I think Veronica will be showing this from her perspective. And it's largely a profit without conscience. That's how I see it, without an ethical or moral framework. And certainly without any concern or care for people on the ground, or indeed care for the environment. So I invite you to imagine the scene. Children and women come to open mines on the side of the hill, digging with their hands into the earth to collect cobalt, extracting all they can from the surface. Even pregnant women and women just after giving birth, with their babies in arms, are on the hillside, desiring to earn a few cents, maybe $1, to get the food that they need to eat for today. And as you look around the hill, there are hundreds of women and children digging, crushing, washing, sorting, stacking, loading, and transporting minerals for a few cents. And that few cents enables them to keep body and soul together, to live. And so what resilience is there, and what holding on to life is there? But there are dangers everywhere. The earth is unstable. The groundwater is highly toxic. It's one massive radioactive lake, heavy with minerals and uranium. And women and children stand in that water, sometimes up to their knees. And I ask, are they aware of the health risks? Health and safety in terms of mining is unheard of. And women's job is mostly to collect the surface minerals. It's usually the men, but also women go to dig, and they dig big holes and shafts into the earth. And many have lost their lives in the digging, because the sides of the cave, the sides of the hole they're digging cave in. And because of that, then there are many orphans due to the death of one or both parents. And some have lost limb, and some are paralyzed. And there's no future for children who are forced to work to provide for their families, to keep their own body and soul together. And they are impacted by this extreme poverty, and they are exploited by this corporate giant. Because child labor is the cheapest labor you can have in the world. And this labor permits us to have our electronics, our cars, and for the giant to make profit. And so that's setting the scene of what it's like, and what it has been like, and what it has tended to return to post-COVID. and in the COVID experience. So maybe I see Veronica is
Yes,
back.
thank God you're back, Sister Veronica. We were just exploring, we were just kind to illustrate some of the experience, you know, what are the direct and indirect impacts of corporate irresponsibility and its supply chains and the hidden supply chains as well, on women and girls. And we're very happy that you're back with us. Perhaps you could speak to that experience in Nigeria and across West Africa. And in that, there is a comment here from Anne, I think, that I might, after you've spoken. Anne is in Liberia and would also like to comment. But Sister Veronica, if you...
I'm so sorry about the network challenge. As I was saying that traditionally in rural areas, women depend on farming and fishing for their livelihood. And the farm work is done on the land. And this land, which is so precious to the women, as we say, our land is our life. The whole of the women's life is connected on the land. The water, the farm, the livelihood, everything about them. And this precious gift God has given to them has been grabbed by these multinational companies, all in the name of development, to bring development to the community, and they never fulfill that. The land they have grabbed has now made the women to be poor because they cannot farm. Their livelihood cannot be sustained. And some of these women have gone into other types of things in order to sustain their families. Some have gone into trafficking, human trafficking. Some have been trafficked themselves. The girls have been forced into early marriage to sustain the family. Sexual abuse in order to get meager money to live. And the stream, these companies use chemicals that pollute their stream. Their main source of water is stream water and river. And most of these chemicals are run down to the stream. Unknowingly to them, they fetch the water and drink, which is not healthy for them. Some have given testimonies about their challenges, barrenness, miscarriages because of the toxic water. In the oil company areas, you find out that the rivers are polluted. The women cannot fish. There is gas flaring in those areas, which is not healthy for them. Because of the fume in the air, the pollution, I lived in Niger Delta, and I know what I went through. At night, you cannot sleep. The air is polluted. You wake up tired as if you have not gone to bed. And this affects the women more. Most women have miscarriage because of all this. And some of them, they go through these things and they don't know that it's the cause of the gas flaring in their area. There is sexual abuse by these workers of these multi-companies, the securities. The women have given testimonies, but they are ashamed to come out and say it openly because of stigmatization. How they have been abused, sexually abused severally, simply because they are looking for employment from this company. Some of them have been deceived. And some of them who are working there, their supervisors also abuse them in order to give them some product to sort and all this. Some of the women will bring their children to support them in the company in order to meet with the demands. And it's so disheartening that all these products are not even seen in the community.
Mm.
They are not found in the community. The rubber is produced and given to other companies who use it to produce tires like Michelin. The oil is not found in the community. They are being used out there. They promise the people of development infrastructures, but there you cannot find electricity, no tap water, no health care centers. So the people are not happy. Just last week, because normally the Prisco and SEAT, they dug deep trench of about 15 feet deep and 40 feet wide, crossing the community. And the people, the women, as they're going to farm in the little land they have, most of them are falling into this trench, injured, and nothing is done about it. Last week, they were clearing, during rainy season, they cleared the trench. As they were clearing the trench, they pack all the sand on top of the yam farm that women have done, cultivated, making them to lose all they have planted. And our partner, one of our partners working with Friends of the Earth, went to visit them. They were in deep agony because what they have hoped in that will sustain them for the few months have been lost. And the company does not care about the welfare of the people. What they're after is their own profits. They expand the land without caring about the people. The forests have been cut down, which is not healthy for the people, all in the name of their own profits, not for the community. If I keep on telling about the
stories, yes,
we don't stop here.
You couldn't stop. Perhaps if we looked at you know, that the webinar specifically around the impact on women and girls, and you know, the scramble for profits and the resulting scramble across Africa for minerals and resources to fuel you know, the sustainability aims for those of us here in Europe and across the global north. It's a what am I trying to say? What does what I'm like, there's so much that I want to ask and I can't actually quite you know, and I have the questions in front of me. What I'm trying to ask is you know, we know the on the ground impact now, and this is, you know, predicted to escalate in the future. In your own work, how are you you know, how are you responding to supporting the communities and the women in particular who are very reliant on food production and feeding the family and educating their children? What is the on the ground work that you yourselves are doing to support this?
What we do, we partner with other NGOs, such as Friends of the Earth. We try to support them, to give them the voice, to come out and testify. Because most of them are afraid. They don't want to talk, because if they talk, they may get missing or they may be killed. So they don't want to come out. they have been encouraged to voice it out. And some of them have traveled outside the country to, like when we went to Côte d'Ivoire, some of them went with us, selected women and youth, went with us to see what other people are suffering, so that to encourage them that they are not alone in this fight. And that's why they need to build their synergy to fight these multinational companies. And through lobbying and advocacy. We also link them. Last year, they went to Brussels to testify, because some of these multinational companies deny that they don't know what is happening. So they went there with pictures and testify, this is it. When you hear from the horse's mouth, you have to believe. So we work with them, and we also joined the UN binding treaty in order to fight that, to encourage our government, to give our government the support they need to fight it.
Thank you. Sister Winifred, I wonder, could you speak to your experience both in responding on the ground in DRC, but also your work at the UN and in directly challenging the corporation, the big giant itself?
Thank you, Veronica, and what you're doing is hugely important, so keep going. For Good Shepherd on the ground, having spent 2 years in the community, we were known as the Walking Sisters, listening to what the people wanted and what they wished to do. The first focus was informal schooling for the children. And so they set up informal schooling, which still continues, and this was a way out of the mines. Together with the informal schooling, they also had a feeding program. And the feeding program was also part of another part of the project where parents said, we want to come out of the mines. We want to do work that is sustaining for ourselves. And so they moved into agriculture, both in terms of crop production and fish production. In terms of fish ponds and having then enough food for the local community and being able to make sales in other areas. So those ventures have been going on together with programs of empowerment for women and girls. And the word Maisha means life, and it was a kind of very symbolic of people choosing life. And so the name of the project. Taking it to the corporate side of the experience, I, in 2021 and 2022, through ethical investment, which was done by our sisters here in New York, Toronto, making investments through a group that they have been involved with, Investor Advocates for Social Justice. And so they invest money into corporates so as to have a voice on the floor, on the shareholders' floor, with regard to impacting and witnessing, as Veronica has said, but also calling out these issues of human rights violations. And so I've done that 2 years in a row. And last year, I think we were even better organized because there were 6 of us on the floor online, but one person was actually in person on the floor. Because of the COVID, we were online. But we were better organized in that we were bringing human rights violations from multiple angles. So naturally, I was coming in terms of child exploitation, but the whole issue of labor rights and decent work and decent pay and benefits for work and health and safety. So all of those issues throughout the Tesla supply chain, because even workers that would not be in the DRC, but in other moments and in other spaces in the chain, their rights are not being honored either. And so it's an abuse of labor rights throughout the whole process. So even up to looking at things like diversity on the board, they're largely a male white corporation. And so there's something about the whole, they embody a system of exploitation.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're either unconscious or unaware, or are driven by this greed and the need for profit, more profit, to excel in profit making. And so calling for diversity on the board. Now, let me say that like this doesn't go with applause. What has actually happened is we have been prevented in different ways from being on the floor this year. We were heckled last year by many of the shareholders who wanted to see the great Elon Musk and hear from him. And so what's that nun doing there on the floor? You know, what's she talking about? So this kind of heckling. So we've had, and the IASJ, the Investor Advocates for Social Justice, have had a challenge this year in how to get onto the floor. And so we couldn't, as Good Shepherds, actually take the floor because we didn't buy our shares through computer shares. And secondly, before that happened, the AGM was moved up earlier to the end of April, and we all missed it. It was published behind the scenes, not on the front page of the New York Times. So we have been facing those challenges. And so now they're remobilizing to be able to link with people who have the computer shares and are able to speak on the floor to bring this issue. So as I say, you win one, you think I'm on a winner, and then all of a sudden you're back where you began. And so we have to re-strategize. And so this is hugely important. We need each other. We need to be all networked. We need to be all engaged together and supporting each other.
It's interesting you say that, because there's a comment here by Father Chica, who is the coordinator of AEFJN of the Secretariat. He says it would be great for Sisters Veronica and Winifred to create a synergy of multi-level advocacy strategy. And Chica again. Yes, we do need each other, and that is important, because you're talking about even at the corporate level, where you yourselves are have a stake in the corporation, and you're still denied your own rights as shareholders. And Sister Veronica is also saying that corporate structures just don't consider at all and don't really care about anything other than their own profit and greed. So I have one last question, and then I'd like to open it out to everybody else. In one sentence, Pope Francis talks about, hearing the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. But how do we hear, we can hear it, but how do we encourage others, like, those corporates that actively overlook human rights? How can we help them to hear?
Ed?
Yeah, very briefly, because I know that Anne from Liberia is quite desperate to get in here and ask a question. Yeah.
Well, I think I'm taking a sentence from Pope Francis as the motivator and the vision. And Pope Francis said in Laudato Si, for us to enter into a frank dialogue between politics and the economy in the service of life. So that's my overall vision, to enter into that dialogue, and that's part of my daily work at the United Nations.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sister Winifred. And Sister Veronica?
And for me, I would say that we are all connected. Everything we do is connected to our life. We should learn to listen to one another. We should learn to hear the cry of the vulnerable ones. No matter the level we have found ourselves, the rich, let's just hear the cry of the poor and the cry of the earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Veronica. Thank you, Sister Winifred. And I'm going to open this up to everybody else. Anne, if you're still on with us, Anne in Liberia, I know you wanted to ask or to make a comment. If you are there, if you unmute.
Yes, I'm here.
Ah, good
I'm
woman.
here, Winifred.
Anne, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm totally sorry.
And what's your?
I'm just fine altogether. Thank you very much.
Do you have
But
a
my
question? Would you like to
comment
make?
is
Yeah.
really about-
Oh gosh, no. Oh,
yeah, it's
yeah.
related to what has been said already, but it largely has to do with our context of Liberia, which is a very small country about the size of Ireland, and the population is also rather small. On the other hand, the exploitation
And I wonder if you switched off your camera.
has been that I've heard the others say we network. So I've switched off my camera. Switch it back on. Camera. Stop video.
Yeah, we're having difficulty catching what you're saying. So maybe if you switched off your camera.
It's on. It's on. Okay. Try now. Tony?
Yes, that's better. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let me begin again. I'm speaking from Liberia. I'm a missionary sister of the Holy Rosary, and we are here in the very bush area. But we have been highly engaged in land grabbing and the prevention of it, which I think other members are talking about indirectly. And let me explain a little bit about it. We liaised with all the NGOs here, and what we did was we organized to prevent land grabbing and to establish the rights of customary owned land. And we got over, how many signatures? 90,000, something like 90. The government and was passed. It's a revolution in the rights of the indigenous ownership of land. And it means that the people who have been in the land generation unto generation can have it, can keep it. The only thing we have to do now is to get the proper deed from each and every group, and exploitation of land grabbers and even companies. If they attempt to come into the rural part of Liberia now, or even the capital city, they must go through the channel of the ownership of the customary land, which is the entire community, not just elders, not just individuals. So in other words, private land from now on here will not be a simple process. And that in itself will protect the rights of women in the community, protect their right to keep the land in their hand, because one company came in here from Indonesia, and they had been thrown out of Indonesia because of the exploitation of the environment, and they were having oil palm. They flooded around Monrovia with oil palm, and women who were in small businesses overnight lost complete control over their market. However, the good news was that they then made a special contract to give the outgrowers some rights. But when the time came, the company was clever, they sold it. So we didn't have to honor that. But we are fighting that at every front. And I think I should stop now, Tony.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'd say asking about examples in each country, as Sister Veronica was saying, that we could go on for days and weeks and years, kind of documenting some of the experiences on the ground of individuals, communities, and the environment. But I'm afraid I've run over my own time, so I might have to hand back to Brian. But I would like to thank you so much to Sister Veronica and Sister Winifred for your time, your energy, for the fantastic, amazing work that you do both within your country and beyond. And please, as you say, we are interconnected, and the only way we can work together is and make a change is to work and speak united. So thank you so much, and thank you, Anne, for your input too.
Thank you.
Brian, I'm going to go back to you now.
Okay, thank you all very much indeed. I mean, what can we say? I mean, those inputs were absolutely super, and I think each person's input was an inspiration for the next person's input, and so much so that we had Anne come in at the end, and Anne could have had a whole section to herself, I think. And I think we may well come back to Anne again to find out a little bit more about what she does and where she is and how she does it. But in the words of Winifred, I think the best line that I got from that was just keep going, keep doing what you're doing, and that is the action. And in fairness, Tony, I don't think you went that much over time, but even if you did, I think it was well worth it. And we're very grateful to Tony for taking the time to prepare the questions, and to Winifred and to Veronica, who carefully prepared the answers and took the time to be with us this evening. And also we hope that they will stay with us. But just before you go, and there is a question, I'm just going to call on Sister Bernadine. Sister Bernadine, her comment was really that a beautiful sharing by the two main presenters, which we absolutely agree with, but that Sister Bernadine has a question or a concern, particularly for Veronica from Nigeria. So maybe, Sister Bernadine, if you want to unmute, maybe put your hand up so that we can see you there. And we will try and spotlight you when you might be able to ask your question, and then we might move on afterwards to our next speaker. Go ahead, Bernadine.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Sister Bernadine, a daughter of charity. My concern is to Sister Veronica from Nigeria, as I've said. What she has shared is something that most of us are very familiar with, the reality of the situation in most of the areas with regard to the big time companies and the destruction of the river and the sea. What I want to find out is there are specific vulnerable areas in Nigeria, and she mentioned one, the Niger Delta. Is she in link with either a congregation or a group in these areas with whom she can work in case there are concerns in these areas with regard to the issues we are talking about, the destruction of the land? Can they contact her? And will she be able to help people in these areas, or she's located in a particular area where she works? Thank you.
Thank you. Sister Veronica, did you get that question?
Yes, thank you, Sister Bernadine. We have been focusing on Edo Delta, but we have other NGOs working in Niger Delta whom we partner with. You cannot do it alone. We need each other to do it. So we work as a team, different organizations working together, different NGOs working together, because when you are fighting these multinational companies, if you don't have a good structure, you will not be able to do it. So we need to build our webs together in order to web them in. So we have other people who reach out there, like the Green Faith. We also partner with them. Last year we have series of seminar and input there too. If not, I won't be talking in the air. It's from what is happening there I'm talking about. I don't know whether you are clear, Sister Benedict.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Sister Veronica, would it be okay if we shared your email with Sister Bernadine so that maybe we could link both of you up outside of this seminar or outside of this webinar? Would that be okay at the end?
Yes, it's okay. And I can write my email on the chat too. there.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Sister Bernadine, indeed, for your comments. There are so many online with the lived experience of some of what Winifred and Veronica have been speaking about, that there is a great interest, and it just shows really the amount of effort that people have to go to try and make even a small bit of difference. But as Winifred said, we need to keep going. And with that in mind, we will do just that with respect to our webinar this evening. So just once again to thank Tony and to thank Winifred, to thank Veronica, to thank Anne, and indeed thank Bernadine for their complementing of each other's work and their inspiration and the presentation. I mean, I could feel what Winifred was saying when she described people digging. I could absolutely see what it was like. I could almost feel the tiredness of somebody who was breathing in the bad air in the Niger Delta. Your presentations very much have brought the issue to life for all of us here this evening, and we're very, very grateful to you for that.